the APRN nonsense, because to me it was just rude of them. But if it affects how our numbers are for adult medicine and funding.
Could you look away from a dirty man? Turn the man away, cause the way he wears a dirty hat. But the dirt on his hand is from the land that they took away. He doesn't understand. Blood quantum, they want him to stay up in the schools. Love flaunting paperwork, making up who is who. Uh-oh is the oh-oh, they're taking away the twos. Now a quarter poco is less than a quarter tank of fuel. But still he keeps on performing, chanting and dancing up in the garden with oh-oh, seeds planting words from his song, yeah. And this is the life of a performer, but should he walk away from his neighborhood? Follow his Naʻauʻao, but it's not the way they say he should. Follow is the ground below the soul where he bears his foot. Ho'i, kalo'i, or just clocking where the pay is good. But where were you during the storm? Alopu mea na kākou, e anō wau o ke Ahupuaʻa, o ka ike ana scannen ma ke ia aina Hānai Puaʻa ma umauma nei ma ka mokupuni o Hawaii, e anō ka aina o kauna mano. E anō wau e mele aku ana wau I ke kahi mele, ano punahele o ke ia manawa, pili ke ia hana. Could you look away from a dirty man? Turn the man away, cause the way he wears a dirty hat. But the dirt on his hand is from the land that they took away, he doesn't understand. Blood quantum, they want him to stay up in the schools. Love flaunting paperwork, making up who is who. Uh-oh is the oh-oh, they're taking away the twos. Now a quarter poco is less than a quarter tank of fuel. But still he keeps on performing, chanting and dancing up in the garden with oh-oh, seeds planting words from his song, yeah. And this is the life of a performer, but should he walk away from his neighborhood? Follow his Naʻauʻao, but it's not the way they say he should. Follow is the ground below the soul where he bears his foot. Ho'i, kalo'i, or just clocking where the pay is good. But where were you during the storm? Not doing is doing no harm. Stand firm on your platform. No reason you can't perform. But still he keeps on performing, chanting and dancing up in the garden with oh-oh, seeds planting words from his song, yeah. But this is the life of a performer, eh-ha, eh-ha, eh-ha. Oh, la kākou.
Kawai mapuna kapu kaha ha'a inu ha'a ola ha'a kapu ha'a noa e na kupu o na kupuna e malama ka mapuna I ola loa I mauli ola Aloha. Aloha mai kako. Velina mai, welcome. O wau Kealiʻimakamanaonalani Shannon Parker Poʻoloa. No hilo hanakahi wai kea hilo Hawaii mai au o ka mauna o a kea kuʻuwahi mauna a o mauna lua kuʻuwahi kai. So I am calling in from Hilo. I live in Hilo town, so Hilo Hanakahi, but my one hanau is Kuli'oʻo on the island of Oahu, where there's the Mauna Lua Bay, and so I carry that vai with me today. So Mahalo, and mahalo nui for everyone that put their information in the chat. That's awesome. Aloha, Carmel. Nice to see you again. Laura, you are calling in from Hawaii Care Choices. Awesome. Awesome. Please continue to put in your information. Bring in those places that are very pili to you, what mauna you're calling from and your vai. Those places are what makes you. Mahalo. The next slide. So we are the Mapuna Lab. We, as the Mapuna Lab, are a place of respite for those experiencing colonial trauma. And the work that we do is centered on our na'au and focused on healing and health. And it's guided by the ohia lehua as our kumu, as an endemic Hawaiian tree. And using this, the ohia lehua, we work in reciprocity and partnership to healing the chronic and existential pain of historical intergenerational trauma with us as Kanaka Maoli and also our Pacific Islander brothers and sisters. And viewing the land as our communities and health as water cycle resilience, the Mapuna Lab looks to the cloud-catching, truth-telling ohia lehua for ways to ho'i kawai, to remove the seen and unseen emotional blockages to restore the vai stolen by trauma. Okay. Here is our learning objectives. Sorry, Kalawai. So our learning objectives for today, our participants will engage in an immersive learning experience and identify how the different recovery pathways in the Makawalu Naʻauʻao preventative curriculum, a culturally based curriculum, fit into SAMHSA's working definition of recovery. You will learn how to utilize the impact of colonization on the Ahupuaʻa conceptualization to understand the historical importance of the impacts of colonization on the indigenous connection to Aina and the disconnection to Aina as it relates to substance use and recovery. Participants will understand how to utilize the Makawalu Naʻauʻao preventative curriculum, a culturally based curriculum, in their professional role. Okay. And here is our agenda for the day. So we are doing our opening protocol, an introduction overview of our agenda. And this part is, just really important in the way that we create cultural safety, all of these components with the beginning music and the oli. All of this is to welcome this space as a culturally safe space. We are extremely fortunate and so blessed to have our guest speaker today, Kanoelani Davis, will be sharing about her curriculum, and then we'll have a break, and then we'll dive into the introduction into Makawalu Naʻauʻao, then have our closing protocols. You guys are in for a treat. I know it's noon, so please eat lunch and drink lots of water throughout this presentation. And so here, having mentioned what we're going to be doing today, talking about historical and colonial trauma, we want to offer this opportunity to consent to deepen. Here is where it is through our ancestral memory that we all carry. We acknowledge our systems of support that surround us. This allows us to bear witness to our own resiliency so we may participate in the process of truth-telling, healing, and emotional intelligence. But we also understand that in the act of asking permission, we want you to know it is okay if this might not be, if at any time you need to log off, it is okay. We will be sending all of this information from this presentation to you afterwards. So all of our slides and will be uploaded on our website, on Hawaii Train, and on YouTube for you to view later if you do need to log off. So I just want to give a minute to allow that. Should anyone need to log off, you may do so. Okay, mahalo. I welcome and invite Lilinoe Kauahikaua. She here. Aloha, Lilinoe. Aloha.
Ahahea keia nola e na ohana. Ua mai ole o ka aina malie. Ahena ni wale no I ka makaloha. Eia kahile oe. E pane mai hoʻina. Aloha e. Aloha e. Aloha, okay. Kalamai. Am I doing the whole? I don't want to do the same presentation I did in the morning because I think maybe many of you probably went to that. Yeah. Okay.
I think if you want to cover whatever you're comfortable covering, I know that a lot of what you shared is really also significant to the why the need for a prevention curriculum for our youth. But I think we have some different here too.
Okay, yeah, I'll just do kind of like a quick version then, quick and dirty. So mahalo to Mapuna Lab for allowing me to share space, and mahalo to Kanoelani as well. I'm representing two organizations today. One is the Ohana Center of Excellence for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander behavioral health. And I'm going to put that link in the chat right now. And so this is a new national program that is an online repository of resources, providing empowerment education to support those who are seeking behavioral health care, including mental health and substance use. We provide holistic and cultural approaches to serving the needs of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And so one of our aims is to support training like this across the nations for our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders that may be looking for different ways to culturally connect and ground themselves. And so the other organization that I represent is Papulolakahi, which is the Native Hawaiian Health Board. My name is Lilinoe Kauahikaua, and I am a program coordinator, and I serve for all projects related to substance use and mental health. And so Papulolakahi is the Native Hawaiian Health Board, which I totally just said. We were authorized by the Native Hawaiian Healthcare Improvement Act, which was passed by Congress back in the 80s. And our aim is to raise the health status of Native Hawaiians to the highest possible level. And we do this through our strategic partnerships and programs and policy making. Next slide. We also oversee the 5 Native Hawaiian healthcare systems and the Native Hawaiian Health Scholarship Program, as well as the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander 3R COVID response team. Next slide, please. And so prior to European contact, I usually start most of my spiels like this, talking about the strength and the amazingness of our people. So prior to European contact, our worldview was that of understanding the reciprocal nature between our mind, body, and spirit, as well as the individual, the family, or the community, along with the environment and spirituality. And so that's represented on the left of the screen here with the Hawaiian perspective developed by Unkuli Keke Paglinoan. So this reciprocal balance was what was needed in order to achieve Mauliola, or optimal health. And then with the influence of Western influence and colonization created these imbalances in our family and everyday systems and the way that we interacted, and then shifted our paradigms. And then on top of that, with cultural, historical, and intergenerational trauma, which led to health disparities and some fracturing within our Ohana systems. Next slide, please. And so the way that we kind of see this manifesting today is in an overrepresentation of Native Hawaiians in substance treatment services, as well as overrepresentation in mental health services and incarceration. Next slide, please. And so for a lot of the framing that we like to do for this work, I'm not going to read all the quotations because I closed my document with all the quotes on it, so I'll just read the ones that are on screen. And so this framing comes to us from the report titled Imikiolamau, which is a name gifted by Auntie Malia Craver, and it means to perpetuate life or perpetuate healing. And so this was originally born out of a SAMHSA grant for co-occurring disorders. Actually, you know what? I really want to read the whole thing. Give me just one moment. Okay. Okay, model. Okay, so I'm going to read these quotes again. I like to bring them into all the spaces because it really helps to frame this work. This was brought by a bunch of Native Hawaiian organizations at Pupuna who really paved the way for this work in the decades prior. So those quotes for this visioning are: in order for Native Hawaiians to heal and recover from substance use and mental health issues, we need a sense of place which provides anchors for our values and balance in life. We need immediate access to and availability of a safe, healthy environment, which includes all the natural elements such as kai, saltwater, wai, freshwater, air, aina, land, and all of the animate and inanimate aspects of nature which make up this physical environment. To heal, we need more than just Western practices, for those practices are not what is going to make our people well. The motivation comes from caring from our sources, the aina, and the reward is our own wellness, which we perpetuate in all of our relationships through caring for the aina. We need the resiliency and protection our culture provides in order to prevent relapse and redefine ourselves away from pathological diagnosis. We need a sense of self retrieved from our past through ancestors, present through purpose, and future through our descendants. We need our language, traditions, and ceremonies which provide ways to reconnect to our spirituality and to our concept of our source. We need our land and other natural resources, our language, our aumakua, our deified ancestors, our kupuna, our elders, and ohana, our family, and our roles as makua, parents, kamali'i, children, and kanaka people. We need not become Western to heal. Next slide, please. And so with that framing, which frames all of Papalolokahi's work in this field, we created this Ahupuaʻa model, which was influenced by the healing forest model created by White Bison, as well as Dr. Keali Kaholokula's framework for the social and cultural determinants of health, which you'll see down on the bottom there to the right. And this, the Ahupuaʻa was drawn by a local Native Hawaiian artist from Hawaii Island named Kimo Paka. And so this Ahupuaʻa model provides this metaphorical and living model to view the ongoing impacts that colonization and historical trauma and other risk factors have had on Native peoples. And then it also provides this resonant model of a Native system that's grounded in a reciprocal relationship of kanaka to aina and spirituality in order for us to achieve that collective healing or that mauliola. So the Ahupuaʻa itself is a living, breathing example of a thriving, healthy Native system that's all connected through wai, which you'll see there flows through every interconnected system. And if you're not familiar with the Ahupuaʻa, it's a land division from ancient times, but they're still very alive today. But a land division that runs from the mountain to the sea. And there's a lot of interconnected systems within the Ahupuaʻa. And the health of one system are all dependent on the health of one another. So if one system is unhealthy, all the systems are unhealthy. And so when we look at this model, we see our risk factors and our protective factors, our social and cultural determinants of health that are envisioned within the rain. And they're envisioned in this way symbolically to show the cyclical transmission, because the water cycle rate comes down as the ua or the rain, it flows into the Ahupuaʻa, goes to the interconnected systems, goes down the kahawai into the ocean, and then is evaporated up and into the lanier, up into the sky again, and then comes back down as the ua. And you can kind of see the cyclical transmission and the way that it impacts the system. You can kind of think of these risk factors in your mind, maybe a little bit like pollution. So like when pollution starts to get into our land systems, and it's washed through the systems and continuously impacts the land over and over again until it's cleaned. So that's kind of the idea here. We see the risk factors on the left-hand side, and when it starts to come into the land systems, starts to be washed down the kahawai, down the river into our soil, it starts to create these layers of eha, or the pain, right? By creating these layers of anger, of fear, of guilt, and shame, that starts to wash down into the soil, and then impact all of the subsequent systems. So you can see kind of the zoom in here on the left of the lo'i system, right, which is a wetland terrace system for growing kalo, or taro. So we can kind of zoom into that and see, like, how does this unhealthy soil then impact our lo'i? What happens is we can see the kalo starts to come up through this unhealthy soil, and you can look at kalo as a reflection of ourselves. That's haloa, our ancestor, if you're familiar with that. Mo'olelo of Haloa. And if you're not, go look it up because it's an awesome mo'olelo. So Haloa is our ancestor, and as Haloa begins to puka or come out of this unhealthy soil, it can carry with it this eha, right, down deep, and may not even really know that it's there. So if our people are born today with this eha down deep inside, when it starts to bubble up to the surface, it can manifest as some of the symptoms that we see today, like child abuse, violence, different addiction, mental illness, suicide. Those are the surface symptoms that we're seeing today, but the root is much deeper, as you can see. So what we also kind of take a look at here and see through this model is that if one day we're working in the lo'i and we see a kalo that's sick, we have to look around to the other kalo. Are they sick? Is the whole lo'i sick? And how is that ma'i, or that sickness, getting in? We have to look up the auai, those smaller canals there, up the kahawai, up the river, up all the way up into the mauna to see how is the sickness getting in. And if we don't do that work and we don't take the time to try to trace that root, and we just decide, okay, you know what, I cannot figure it out, I'm just going to take that kalo, I'm going to heal it, I'm going to put it back, then it's only going to get sick again because we haven't done the work to heal the environment around it. We haven't taken the time to really trace that root. And that's kind of what we're seeing today in things like incarceration, or when residential treatment, when folks are taken off island, out of their communities, out of their homes, you know, and then put right back in, right? The work hasn't been done to heal their ohana, heal the community, whatever it may be. But the other thing we want to remember is that along with these intergenerational traumas or intergenerational risk factors that are passed down, or lifetime risk factors that are passed down, we also, our ancestors passed down these incredible protective and resiliency factors, which you'll see on the right-hand side here. And this is the beauty and strength that our culture provides to us. And it gets transmitted through us and through our people and through our systems in the same ways. It impacts all of our systems. Sometimes those risk factors, they're like way louder, right? Like way in your face, and they're just trying to consume your everything. So what this model really is trying to do is create a space to support our cultural life ways within a system that, within a Western system, which is often trying to make us stuff our cultural ways into a little Western box. But with this framework, we're trying to create a system, continuum, if you will, that is supportive of our cultural life ways and creates this space that we're all working collectively to heal all of our systems. So we can see the Ahupuaʻa as ourselves, as our ohana, as our communities, even reflective of our care systems through like a systems theory kind of an approach. So we see our protective and our resiliency factors that are getting washed through our systems with our cultural life ways, our cultural interventions that are within this Ahupuaʻa. They're starting to clean our risk factors out of the way, and then promoting and creating more space for our protective and resiliency factors, which creates more healthy soil that is vai, or it's rich with this balance, it's lokahi, right? Our mauliola, our health, our optimal health, our mana, which is our spiritual energy, our pilina, this our connections, hugely fundamental values and parts of Kanaka identity. And so through that, when our kalo starts to puka out of this this healthier soil, you can see on the right hand side here, they're much more happy, they're much happy little kalo that puka out of that space. And so this model really is something we want to share with folks, and a mahalo Mapuna Lab and Kanoe for allowing me to share this in this space. Oh, you can skip all the rest of the slides.
Mahalo. Mahalo so much, Lilinoe. Every time, I know we did just share this morning. We had another, our very first webinar about cultural safety spaces this morning. So mahalo for doing it again, because it's so impactful, and your conceptualization of this, of the white bison model into this is really impactful for me personally. So mahalo nui. Along with the Ahupuaʻa model, we are also framework overview 2 other frameworks. One is SAMHSA's working definition of recovery. The other one is the 12 core functions of a CSAC, so substance abuse counselor. In the CSAC core functions, we, for this purpose of our webinar, focusing on client education. Next slide. For the SAMHSA's working definition of recovery, we dove deep into this, and from our Makawalu Naʻauʻao curriculum viewpoint, looking at recovery as prevention. So taking the actual definition of recovery and translating it to how this looks to us when we try to look at recovery as prevention, or prevention as recovery. And like that, what the output is that we want in recovery, we could start with that as prevention. So with hope, hope is really important, and our keiki need hope for their future. And having ike kupuna allows them to know who they are and where they come from. Purpose-driven, this is a very important, understanding your kuleana as your purpose. This strengthens their connection to who they are, and it equips them with the drive to succeed through the lenses of a Hawaiian worldview. So many pathways. This reminded me of the Olelo Noʻeau, Aʻohe Pauika Ike Kahalau Hoʻokahi, which is all knowledge is not taught in the same school. And that's true. There's many ways to learn many different aspects of our culture. And our curriculum is holistic, learning tools for prevention through our kupuna, our ike kupuna, is also teaches them how to live in harmony with our world and one another. Peer support is very important in looking at recovery as prevention, is teaching our keiki their role in their health and their community fosters a sense of belonging, because when you know your kuleana, you know where you fit in, and that can be a unifying factor. Relationships are incredibly important in all cultures, but particularly in Hawaiian culture, everything is very reciprocal, and we thrive best when we're in good relationships with our family and community. So creating positive relationships with our parents and extended family and community is paramount for our keiki. Cultural is tied into every part of this aspect. Immersing ourselves in our living practices is who makes us who we are. Addressing trauma, understanding intergenerational trauma allows us to see what we don't want to perpetuate. So having knowledge of that history that Lilinoe shared, having our keiki understand that this is what has happened, and you can choose now to not perpetuate that. And that brings us to our strengths, and again, kuleana. So teaching from a strengths-based perspective gives our keikis opportunities to increase their mana and their spiritual gifts, so that is their kuleana to perpetuate for the next 7 generations. And respect, our culture teaches that respect is foundational in understanding our reciprocal relationship to the aina and one another. So next, so bringing us to our drawing that we've done for our series, Why Hānai Ahu. So one thing that we have learned, storytelling is very impactful. And I wanted to share a mo'olelo on how we came up with this concept of Hānai Ahu. And about 10 years ago, I was working at Kokua, Kalihi Valley, and very blessed to work under the guidance of Puni Jackson and Kanoelani Davis. And it was in our work environment, some girlfriends and we were just talking, I think, about like boys or guys, I don't know, our subject matter. And Puni just looked at us and she was like, why are you feeding that ahu? And those types of profound little drops of wisdom that she's so known for, but that stuck with me, because when you think about that, why are we feeding that ahu? So when you think of what an ahu is, it's an altar. As we see here depicted in this drawing that I did, in ceremonial spaces I've been blessed to be a part of, when we come to an ahu, we offer oli, and each of us come and we give a makana, a ho'okupu to the ahu. And here you'll see that we bought vai. That was always something very important. We would bring the vai of where we're from to our ahu, and that's what we would offer. We would offer lei. Here you have lei la'i. And we also would offer pu'olo, which is just the tea leaf bundle you'll see there with often would be olena inside or pa'akai or whatever ho'okupu was for that particular aha or that ceremony. But it was in a very intentional act of offering ho'okupu to continue the blessing. It's like it's very reciprocal way that we would honor our akua and our aina that these elements are from, so that these elements will continue to grow and continue to bless us. So it's again ties to that concept of our reciprocal relationship with the aina, but it also speaks to when you live and how you think and what you pay attention to, what you focus on, what is your ahu, what are you feeding your particular altar? Are you feeding your altar your mana, or are you feeding it the risk factors that Lilinoe just suggested, had spoken about? Are we feeding them the protective and resilience factors? So that's why we say, why Hānai Ahu? So we want to teach our keiki that they have that choice, that this is what ahu are you feeding? Is it going to serve your next 7 generations, or are you going to be stuck again in that aspect of the Ahupuaʻa that we want to move away from, we want to grow from? So that I wanted to share with you just the thought behind and the mo'olelo behind this drawing. Mahalo. And then moving into, so next slide, thank you so much. Very thankful for Lilinoe sharing again about the history and the social determinants of health around the impact that the historical impacts have had on us as a people. So we call it the lived dream to the disconnect to agency, is how I'm framing this connection of our history and that brokenness. So the lived dream to me was how our kupuna used to live. That's the dream. We want to get back to that lived dream of being so in tune to our environment and being healthy, true health. The disconnect is all those factors, all those risk factors that Lilinoe had mentioned, that disconnect. But back to agency, and agency is how we claim and make that choice and have our sovereignty to live the way we know we're supposed to. How do we give that to our youth? Through the tools our kupuna has left them. So next slide. And so I, in addition to working for the Mapuna Lab and being an artist, I am also an Indigenous birth practitioner. And so this model here is modeled after Kaluhi'okapo, which is a Indigenous birth class program with Kokua Kalihi Valley. And this is the model that we use to move our becoming parents through the process of birthing with sovereignty, birthing your baby with agency, despite the way birthing happens nowadays. Taking the same concept and applying it to prevention. So if you see here, we have wholeness. So us as a people, we are whole. Ancestral wholeness is what guides us to the future, but we have disruption. We have historical and intergenerational and current disruption that we are in. We can stay stuck in disruption for years. We can stay stuck in this area of disruption, and our keiki can be born in this, into disruption. So it's moving us from this space of being stuck in these risk factors to air, to sovereignty. And this liberates us to understanding the value of reciprocal relationships, to connect ourselves to community. And through that, we move through ceremony. And in the birthing world, that's the birth. The birth is the ceremony. For us, we're rebirthing, we're transforming how we want to be as a people. And we have that sovereignty to move us to ceremony through our connection with the land and who we are and where we come from. And moving us through that ceremony brings us back to wholeness. And so this this model here, we will visit again when I talk and introduce the Makawalu Naʻauʻao curriculum, but I'm perfectly on time. I want to introduce our amazing guest speaker, Kanoelani Davis, to share about her puni keola. Mahalo nui.
Well, aloha mai kako. Oh, you folks did so well and did that so smoothly. That was beautiful. Thank you. I'm a little nervous. The room got bigger and bigger and bigger as you were talking. I'm like, so don't mind me if the human in me comes out. I get nervous and then I start making jokes, and that's just my little quick coping mechanism that I can admit. Like this. Okay, anyways, we're gonna start because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but mahalo mahalo Kealiʻi for allowing me to be in this space and to share some of the work that I have done. But let me start off with who I am and where I'm from. Ko ini hoga po aina la ina I apo I gaya oga oi aloi kala magaina hukana ika ige agabu ubo ina nalua kanaloa oaya kanoe ikamako e ola mako ina wahine akina ui kaan aloha mai aloha mai aloha mai kako o kaua na maka ke kai malupo puna kane ko lu mai ka moloka inuia hina o lani kaula o hayali ko puna hina hine a kualua kai pulawa a ua hanau ia o Luisa hihilani ke kai malu he wahine. O David kamakea waile hua ko puna kane ko kolu mai hana maui o Catherine Waiola hilina I ko puna hine kualua mai ka Hawaii. No pulawa a hanau ia o Rose wahine po ai mopu hilina I he wahine. O Luisa hihilani ke kai malu puna hine ko alua moloka inua hina o John o Kepa koa ko puna kane ko alua mai moloka inu. No pulawa a ua hanau ia o Rebecca kalua o kalua koa e wahine. O Samuel Maui Senior ko puna kane ko alua mai pala ko Maui. O Rose wahine po ai hilina I ko puna kine ko alua mai ka Hawaii no pulawa hanau ia o Victoria ka po ulai kana hilina I he wahi. O Joseph Joao Senior ko puna kane ko kahi mai kauna kakai kai o Rebecca kalua o kalola poa ko puna kine ko kahi mai kauna kakai mo ko inuia hina no pulawa a ua hanau ia o Helen Alice Joao he wahine o kai a wang ko puna kane ko kai mai papakolea o au o ka po ula kina o kilina I ko hine ko kai mai ka no pulawa a ua hanau ia Francis Lealoha Clifford Wang he kane. O Edna May hilani J ka wahine mai Helena o Francis Lealoha Clifford Wang he kane mai papakolea o no pulawa ua hanau ia o Clifford Wang he wahine. O Maria Carmelita Pagio Kawahine, mai San Carlos, Philippines, noho pulawa a hanau ia o Kanoelani Wong he wahine. O Moloka inuia hina ko umoku o Kamakoku ko umauna o Kalohi ko kai o Camilo loa o aina e nohani o fitting that out was just like woo. But it has to be done. And mahalo. My name is Kanoelani Davis. I come from the island of Molokai Nui Ahina in the Ahupuaʻa of Kamiloloa. And I am so humbled and so blessed to be here. to share some of the work that we've been doing. I wanted to see if I can share my screen. I can. Okay, let's do that. All right, so mahalo for this, and mahalo for explaining Hānai Ahu. That was really beautiful. The kuahu is a very special component within our culture that holds a lot of ike, actually, for all of us to learn about. And I'm glad we're starting off with that. So the subject in which I was asked today was to talk about looking to the past, right? So in this, the way I look at it is Ho'ika people going back to the center, going back to the past, going back to perhaps the genealogy, perhaps the subconscious levels of who we are as individuals here in Hawaii as Kanaka Maoli. And it's in regards to the substance Use Curricula Overview. And Kealiʻi mentioned earlier a little bit about Punikiola, and I will go through that in a moment. My job is basically the cultural integration. So it's weaving cultural knowledge with modern education. So really tying in everything together. Some of the things that I wanted to cover today was the Kukulu Ike, which is the modern day cultural curriculum specialist. Yeah, we made it up, but because that wasn't a thing back then. You could be a haku, you could be a ku, you could be ulana, you could be, you were doing this, it was an action. And so we, it's the kukulu ike for us, and that's what it was, and that became the cultural curriculum specialist. And then ho'ika piko, right, to the practitioner. We want to talk about the practitioner, the need for and the necessity to do this work. And talking about validation, yeah, external, internal, ancestral, ike kupuna versus ike Hawaii, some of those differences and what makes them different. We're going to talk about the art and practice of ho'amana and ho'oponopono, just a few of the many arts of healing in our culture. The depth of teaching, interacting, and engaging, and how far, what does that mean? Are we equipped, and by what standards? So really diving into like, what does this mean? Why are we doing this, right? And pu'uhonua, we may have heard of that many, many times, but the understanding of security mentally and emotionally at the same standards of wakahiko physically, and we'll go into that as well. And then as we're going through this, I want us to think about and talk about, why is this important? Because we could do all the work, but if we don't understand why it's important, like to its core, then we're just going through the motion, So I want us to think about some of the patterns, the history, the repetition, whether they were good, they were bad, whether they were working or not working, and really look into what that means. So let's get into the beginning. The catalyst of it all. This is the hua mohala. So ue mai kalani, ue mai kahonua, ue mai nakupuna. This is the evidence. And the reason why I put this, ue mai kalani, ue mai kahonua, ue mai nakupuna, is because we heard the cries of the heavens, we heard the cries of the land, and we heard the cries of our kupuna. And if we're not listening, we're not hearing. And so this is a part of this awareness that we have to recognize in order to better understand the core of what's happening. And Lilinoe's presentation on Ahupuaʻa shares that. It shares the understanding of how everything works together. So at the beginning of it all, especially around Punikiola, around the work I did with cultural integration, there was a cry for help from the kupuna. So around between 2015 and 2017, the community here on Molokai got together kind of often. There was a point in which the kupuna came together, and they were upset. They were losing their people left and right, and you know, and it was hard for them to deal with. It was hard for them to see. We were losing our people to drugs, to substance use. We were losing our people to abuse. We were losing our people to suicide. We were losing our people to alcoholism and many types of addictions. And the kupuna were done. They were just absolutely done. And they called the community together. And, you know, when the kupuna get together and they're calling the meeting, something to think about, something to pay attention to, right? Because they're not coming from an entity. They're not doing research. They're not asking for anything. They're actually there to tell you what they need and what needs to be changed. It's like the earth shaking or something happening on the earth to kind of wake us up to see things, because we're not looking well, right? So the kupuna got together and they asked for more culture in the programs and in interactions with our Native Hawaiians, because the Western models weren't working anymore. And it was evident to them it wasn't working because of the results that were happening on the island with their families, with their friends, with their own people, So their demand, respectfully, was, now is the time to do this. We're going to have to change something. And we're going to have to do it this way. And at that point, I was working, I was working with UHDOP, Department of Psychiatry. I was a community PI at the time. There were two kupuna who took on the program, who took on the call, the kahea. And it was Uncle Wade Lee as well as Auntie Vanda Hanakahi. And they worked with the youth to create a peer-to-peer leadership program in which we understood that as adults, we didn't understand what was happening at a peer level today in this day and age. So the idea was to create leadership from a peer level so that the peers could talk to their to people their age, and they understood it through that realm. And so we gathered the keiki and we brought them together. In fact, my daughters were the pilot to that research with Uncle Wade and Auntie Vanda. After that was all kind of said and done, and I got to watch my children go through it, there was this recognition that we were changing Hawaiian English words into Hawaiian words, but we're still keeping the Western concept. So the kids, no matter how many, it didn't matter if we changed the vocabulary from English to Hawaiian, they still didn't understand what they were talking about. It was still a Western model. That was the problem. And so at that point in time, and Auntie Vanda, who is now passed, and we honor her aloha still to this day, and she was the one that named Punikeola, the program. And Uncle Wade, who was there to help guide the students. Eventually they left. They continued on doing the other work that they were doing. And I was asked by Uncle Wade personally to take over Punikeola. And I said yes, and I agreed. I didn't understand why, but he saw something in me that he felt was he understood. And so I took on Punikeola. And so at that point, I had to observe it more and to see where everybody was at. And that's when I said, okay, no, we cannot do this straight vocabulary change. We got to go deeper. We have to make this Ike Hawaii or Ike Kupuna versus Ike Hawaii. Okay, so the understanding of neither were right or wrong. It just meant we needed to just go deeper. And Ike Hawaii allowed us, or Ike Kupuna allowed us to go deeper. It was, and I see Ike Kupuna as ancestral wisdom. So it was a thought process. So the cool thing about Ike Kupuna is we could still do Ike Kupuna in all English, but it'd still be Ike Kupuna. That makes sense to you folks. And I know it's a hard concept to understand sometimes, but that was the beauty of the universal knowledge that we had as Indigenous people, that we could do it and still You could do it in English, you could do it in Japanese, you could do it in Spanish, but as long as the Ike Kupuna, this ancestral wisdom, the concept, the understanding, the movement around it was in place, you could take it anywhere in this world. Which also meant the person who held it and understood that could go anywhere in the world and still be connected. And so that was the difference between the two. I do want to take a second to breathe. Does anybody have any questions at this moment that they want to ask around specifically around the Ike Kupuna, Ike Hawaii?
Mahalo, Tita. I just want to mahalo you. You top of the line, going. But what I want to share with you as Kupuna is that a lot of people don't know the building blocks, the physical building hand blocks of Kokua Kalihi Valley was built by our pa'a house. It was a time when they were not a chain gang, but they were allowed to do community service. And the Makais were pono with that as well. So that actually started it. But the seed, so when some of these folks, because they didn't have cultural stuff, ended up going to America, they were able in their pu'uvai to stand strong and create whatever they could in the prisons in the mainland. So I just want to let you know what heritage you are part of, because a lot of people, that's not recorded. It's not recorded anywhere. And I say that, and I will share later, some ideas, but I just wanted to share that Ike, because what you're saying is so pono. And SAMHSA and all those guys can put down culture, but if they don't have kauna, oli. So mahalo, hikino.
Mahalo for that. Yeah, and that's one of the things that we do incorporate into the there's a few foundational pieces in this kukulu, in this building of any structure, anything, is having a foundation in which we move through. And Kona is one of our Makawalu, Kuleana, Lavena. Some of those are the things that we have to have, we as in is in my work, and this is totally up to anybody else, but to have as the foundation as we do this work, both to be embodied by it as the kumu, as the person who is going to be teaching it, as well as what we want to create within the foundation of those in front of us and who are learning. So I wanted to share a little bit about that catalyst, the reasoning, and then go into the Leo Pa'iki'i Punikeola. And so Punikeola was born from that, and then it was photo voice. So if you folks are in the university, if you folks are in different agencies and organizations or entities and have learned a little bit about photo voice, as you all know, that is not a not specifically actually, but kind of is not a cultural, aspect. And so that's what was brought in, and that's what we used through Punikeola. And when I said that we went vocabulary wise to Leo Pa'iki'i, that's just going across the, we're raising over the depth, and we're just kind of snorkeling at the top of the water. And so so this is where it was just translated over, and the kids weren't understanding. I have since then evolved Punikeola to now what we call Kealiʻimakamanaonalani. So using kind of the same concept, because we understand that photo taking, we understand that talking through images and art has been a modern way of being able to share who they are, who they want to be, where they want to be, where they are. And so we didn't want to take away from what's happening today. So that was the modern entity of the programs. And that was the modern way of us keeping something relatable to this to this time. And then the Kealiʻimakawalu part was then broadening physical pictures or pictures that we could take with our camera or our phone, and talking about ki'i as in imagery, period. And it could be from mele, oli, it could be from mo'olelo, it could be in actual images. and utilizing parts of our culture as the key. And so that's how we were able to expand and kind of bridge that gap and integrate culture into that work. I want to share a little bit about how I even got into this position and why I'm here. I don't know. I don't ask the questions. I just know if I'm asked to do work, I go do it. And it's because of this man here on this photo. This is my papa, Kahupono Sifu Olohe Francis Lealoha Clifford Wong. He is a product of Papakolea, a product of Ka'u Hawaii. He married my grandmother from Molokai. So I am both islands, or all the islands, or those 3 islands. And so my grandfather is not physically here. He passed a few years ago, but has been the biggest part of who I am. And when I do the work because of him. Sorry, I'm gonna cry, which I haven't done yet. I realize that now, but he's the reason why I do the things that I do. So I try to do it very, very well. I try to keep my integrity. I try to, what they always say, right? You're a reflection of your family, go do good. Okay, make good choices. All right. And always thinking in that way. And then when I have questions, you know, he's the person I call upon. So when we got into this work, things started to wake up within myself. It woke me up as to different healing practices that I had learned. Now, my cultural practice background, I'll just do this, is I'm a hula person from the age of 2, and I am a martial arts person from the age of 2. And so I have both of those in my background. My grandfather was the martial artist and the healer. And so in this work, we learned karate, gung fu, tai chi, qigong, and lua. And to balance that, the ho'oponopono, the art of ho'oponopono, was also lomi lomi la'au kahea, la'au lapa'au. It was ho'amana, and other various healing arts. We understood the practice of the art of ho'oponopono was one that held a high standard of responsibility to the community and to the ohana that we work with. And so ho'amana, and recently, I will say recently, during when my grandfather was sick, these things started to come up. And I was starting to attain some of his old writings, some of his old books, and some of the teachings. And so as I'm going through this, memories started to come up. And this is that ancestral memory, whether it be ancestral like 2 generations ago or ancestral 100 generations ago, these things started to come up. And I had forgotten what I was taught when I was a young girl. And this practice got forgotten about by many people, actually. And many have never heard of it. So the practice of ho'amana, it originated between the time of Mu and the migration of the Pacific. So it can be, and again, I'm going to read this. So although this can be found in many indigenous cultures, Kanaka Maoli called this ho'amana. So its Iki would place us pre-ho'oponopono. So this is a time before ho'oponopono was built into our system as Native Hawaiians and as practitioners. There's not much written on ho'amana, and so it's really hard to talk about, really hard to have more conversations about, really hard to continue cultivating where this belongs in modern times. And so you can't just Google it. It hasn't been labeled anything in Western context. But if I had to label it anything, it was around self-sovereignty, self-healing methodologies. I have gone and asked other practitioners who would practice healing arts in our culture. Some have heard of ho'amana, many haven't. So that's helpful. That's helpful for all of us, because we need to have more conversations around it. For me, this practice was taught generation to generation within my family line. It was mainly passed down through the kane. Again, I'm just unsure at what point and why. nonetheless, my brother and I learned this practice from my grandfather. He broke that mold. I broke the mold. And so I was the oldest child. I was actually trained to protect all my younger siblings. My brothers had physical things that were different. And so I was trained to protect them. And so when he taught martial arts, he had the Academy of Molokai Academy of Arts here on this island, and his belief systems, values, and practices did stem from Ho'oponopono. And if you're a student of ours, we had the patch that embodied Ho'oponopono, and that Ho'oponopono wasn't necessarily what we think of today. It was the balance of nature. And if you looked at the symbolisms, you would have all the natural elements in alignment. And that was Ho'oponopono to him. Are there any questions? I just want to, before I keep moving forward. And I'm not quite sure what my time is.
You're doing great. I want to say maybe 5-10 minutes more, I guess, if you want.
Perfect. Okay, I will fly through this. And actually, I think this is the last page. Great. So going back into the Ho'ika Piko and understanding, what this means is this pu'uhonua system. So I want us to think about what the pu'uhonua was, right? This was a safe place, a refuge, so to speak, for people to come to. We have to ask ourselves, what kinds of people entered the pu'uhonua, right? Who needed to be in the pu'uhonua? Why was the pu'uhonua important? And so today we have similar pu'uhonua, but we don't look at them the same way as we did culturally. And this is very open to interpretation. But the pu'uhonua could be the hospital, right? It could be actually, believe it or not, it could actually be prisons. It would be a place for these folks to rehabilitate. It would be places for people to feel safe. It would be places for people to do what they needed to do to go back out, to strengthen themselves, whether it be through long journeys, whether it be through some type of abuse, whether it be from themselves, the wrong that they did, and they had to go and find grounding to redo what they've done, to ho'opono that. And so a pu'uhonua, it depended on where you lived and where you were from. Our pu'uhonua here held several purposes. But the standard understanding of pu'uhonua was a safe place. And so if we're going to take that standard of understanding what pu'uhonua was, then we have to also understand that that's not readily available for everybody, and everybody's level of need for a pu'uhonua is different. And so when we talk about ho'amana and we integrate culture and past into these spaces, I also want to talk about the mental security and emotional security that we can create for ourselves, within ourselves, so we become the pu'uhonua for ourselves. Or for others, or finding physical spaces that does that as well. Really quickly, I do want to go back to this because I realized I skipped one part of this area, was the practitioner, the need for necessity to do this work. The reason why I have that there is because as an evolving community, as an evolving Kanaka Maoli, and when we lessen our connections to kupuna, when we lessen our connections to those who have experienced life to its fullest and can share their ike, we lose a lot of information. And so at one point, the younger generation had to step up, right, and recreate language, and to bring language to the forefront, to bring culture back to the forefront, whether you were a weaver, hula person, whether you were a va'a person. We were bringing the younger generation, we were bringing it back into light. But what happened in that is that we forgot the kupuna still existed. And although they were still trying to decipher where they were at in this present time because of the historical traumas of not having their culture and their language, bridging the gap was important, and it's still important. So having kupuna involved in the work comes with a lot of richness because of their experiences, what they've saw, what they've seen, what changes they've seen that we may not experience, we'll never have experienced, but we will not experience that for the next 50 years until we're at that age. And then there's understanding of a practitioner and the validation, whether it be external, internal, ancestral. Having to find practitioners to help us to do the work is important as well. And where do we place ourselves? Because is a practitioner validated by what they know, what they've done, how long they've done it, or if they could recite their own mo'okuauhau within that practice. So I just wanted to put those things out there to think about, because as we start to do more cultural integration, as we start to bring culture, ike, kupuna into the system, I want us to think about how we're going to do that and what does that mean, and how do we not repeat history? And that's what this last part is. Why is it important? Have we been reviewing the patterns? Have we been observing? Have we been doing the kilo? Have we looked at the history to its core? Are we going up the river to the base of the mountain? Are we going beyond the base of the mountain to the kilohana? Are we going to the pico to understand why everything below it is not functioning properly? Are we really truly doing that? Because if we're not, as Lilinoe had shared earlier, we're revitalizing the haloa, we're revitalizing the kalo, and then putting it back into the same system. So at one point, we're going to have to break the system. And we're going to have to figure out how to do that, because the one thing that probably kupuna could share is, we're still in the same place we were 40 years ago. But we today would never know that. I mean, I probably would because I'm older than 40, but some of y'all may not have experienced that. And so those are the things that, I wanted to talk about in regards to invoking some thoughts and invoking some questions and asking yourself these questions. Yeah, that's a lot of, in a nutshell, of what the work I do, and returning back to some of these sources mindfully, meaningfully, and intentionally will be important in the work that we do around creation and around perpetuation.
Yeah. I wish you could go longer. I was really, really loving everything that you've shared. That was absolutely amazing, the work that you have done. And so for those realizing I didn't quite explain what made me want to work with you on this very first webinar was all that work you had already done, like really looking to just the thought process and your mo'okuauhau of ike that you come from is so aloha and pono, and I just felt like that needed to be shared. And I really want people to realize, like, as we talk about curriculum, because yes, are we doing the same thing, and this is I wanted to just highlight what's already being done, what's already happening, what's happening now, and I really, really appreciate so much you sharing. Mahalo nui, Kanoe. I did want to say we're going to take a very quick break. We're on time, but we're a little behind, but it's okay. We're going to catch up because I didn't want to cut that off. I was like, this is so ono. But let's take a quick break. And I'm going to turn it over to Jack because he's so good at this part. Mahalo nui. Jack, do you mind explaining?
Yeah, of course, for sure. So hi, everyone. During the break, we're going to have a quick little word search. And so basically how you use this is at the top of your screen, you should see a green bar that says, you are now viewing Viana Lee's screen. Right next to that, there's a little gray bar that says view options. Once you click on that, there's going to be a drop-down menu, and you can find annotate there. It's right below exit full screen and right above mute beyond use computer sound. And if you click on annotate, you should be able to draw on the screen and be able to like highlight words and stuff. So feel free to go ahead and start working on the word search while we have our break.
Okay, wow, you guys are really good. And I love that song, but I don't know if we can play it again, but mahalo. Thank you guys so much for participating in our word search. Thank you so much for taking the time to pretty much get just about all of them. That looks really great. And yeah, we're just a little fun break where we do our word search. So mahalo nui. So moving on, next slide. Thank you. So wow, I am still sitting in that just ono-ness Kanoelani had just shared. And as we move into the introduction of the Makawalu Naʻauʻao preventative curriculum that I and the Mapuna Lab is creating, I just wanted to really reflect and mahalo you again for that dynamic presentation and sharing the practices that you were taught and are passing on, because that is important. Okay, so next slide. So this is a one point you had mentioned, like, again, asking like, what are we doing? Are we repeating? Are we repeating the same things, you know? And so This is, we were gifted this opportunity to create, this is our curricular strategic plan that we were asked to do as part of the Alcohol, Drug, Adult Division with the Department of Health, was to create a 16-day curriculum aimed at Native, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander youth in the age groups of middle through high school with the purpose and intent to prevent substance use. So the purpose of of this curriculum we created, right, is to equip our keiki with the knowledge of our foundation, of ike kupuna, of ancestral knowledge, and also like Hawaii life ways, and as the tools, so that they can ground themselves in this ancestral memory when they are faced with this onslaught, right, of Western ways that lead to confusion, to disconnection, that can lead to mental health issues. Next slide. So we created this curriculum using two frameworks. Using the Palina Ha framework and using the learning tool assessment known as Format. Also, Hilo has taken this on and called it Moana Ha. It is a way of educating our youth that I really, really resonate with. So, but mahalo, I did want to say that this extension of the work done as the Mapuna Lab in partnership and collaboration with ADAD. So mahalo nui. Next slide. So this curriculum is designed to honor the intelligence of the Aboriginal, right? Aimed to engage, teach, encourage, and feed the roots of our collective identities and our shared histories of colonial oppression, so we may foster needed change within our keiki for the next 7 generations. So next slide. Here's the learning, like what I hope our keiki get out of this curriculum. If given the opportunity to pilot this, that's to be talked about in webinar 4, how we're going to move on with this, but this is what we would really like. What we want our keiki to understand what is cultural safety, and they'll learn this by engaging in an immersive learning experience that will equip them with activities, homework, hands-on activities that can awaken them, right, to develop strategies, to use our ike kupuna as a preventative methodology to substance use, like making that choice, that, you know what I mean, I'm like owning that kuleana of theirs. And they're going to do that by identifying strengths that they have that can uplift their own wellness from a cultural perspective, you know? And so like, how can learning about Hawaii life ways, Hawaii ike Hawaii, right? And equip them with tools to withstand the effects that Western culture has and has been having on our physical, emotional well-being and mental health. And it's our hope that after the end of these activities, that their mindset is changed, that they will experience this paradigm shift. That'll be like, you know, we're going to own this. And that's where the ea comes in, right? That's where their sovereignty, their agency comes in, when they decide that they're going to use this ike and make it their own. And that's where we see, does my mindset, behavior, actions bring mana to me and honor my kupuna? Just like Kanoelani has so said, like, go do good, make wise choices, don't reflect bad on the family. But I mean, nowadays there's in our family lines, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of different belief systems. There's a lot of disconnect. So it's up to our keiki to take that leadership, and by kind of honoring maybe something that isn't what they're being taught at home, but honoring something they're being taught in Aina-based education program that makes them think, maybe I want to do different. Maybe this is what I want to honor and give my mana to. And all of, like, for me, I can speak to this as an adult, having not grown up with Olelo Hawaii, not growing up in cultural anything, that it wasn't until I was an adult standing in a circle at a la Ohana, a work day up at Ho'olu'aina, looking up at Kilohana and feeling this visceral, like punch to the gut, like, this is where I need to be. Like my kupuna just pulling me by the ear, you need to be here. And I know you don't like to get dirty, Kea, but get dirty, get in that aina, immerse yourself. And it was that huli that had me realizing what is my kuleana. And it was a very drastic shift. I ended up quitting my job and a whole lot of things changed. And that's the transformation, I guess I can speak to as well when I talk about that process of transforming that comes when you decide to take agency over your life ways. And I want this for our keiki if they're not growing up in it. And a lot of our keiki these days, it's so ono. I know our kupuna, we have keiki speaking Olelo Hawaii, we have whole families speaking Olelo Hawaii, we have Aina education programs popping up and in a lot of places, and it's a beautiful, wonderful thing to see. And that's the thing that we want to encourage. So moving on to our Pilinaha. So Pilinaha is an indigenous framework for health. Pilinaha came from Kokua Kalihi Valley back in 2014, when I had just got started working there. This framework, which by the way means Pili means relationship, yeah. And Pilinaha is like 4, it's like the connection. So it's like relationship to these 4 things. So the 4 connecting things. And so this framework came as people started questioning what is health. And at Kokua Kalihi Valley, which is a federally qualified health clinic, they started looking at this question because of their very unique way they look at community and the way they look at Aina as health, like the health of the land is the health of the people. And that's the saying of Ho'olu Aina, like that ties us. So what does that mean then when we view health, like ourselves as healthy? A lot of people thought health was very individual, that it was something your doctor would communicate to you what is healthy. It was weighing a certain amount. It was fitting in a certain size. It was not talking story, sharing stories. It was not community centered. And so through this work with the Islander Institute during those years, they came up with this framework when we wanted to kind of shift the conversation and the narrative around what was true health. True health was connection to these 4 things. True wellness could be tied through connection to these 4 things. And it's broad, and it can definitely be more narrowed down, but this was the beginning of that conversation. And so when we look at Pilinaha, so you can, next slide, when after talking story with interviewing the community, this was the 4 connections people came up with through what health meant to them, like what made you feel good, and so it was here that we found these 4 connections. So to your better self, to find and know yourself, to place, to have a relationship with your land, to others, to love and be loved, to understand and be understood, and then to the past, present, and future, to have responsibility and purpose in this world, to have kuleana. And kuleana also can really mean knowing your role, knowing your place in the broader system, in the broader picture, in the big picture. What is your kuleana to uplift those around you? So, and that comes from knowing who you are and where you come from, knowing where you're going, and knowing what you have within you from your kupuna, those tools, your ancestral memory. Next slide. So when looking at that last framework I had mentioned earlier, when moving our keiki through this system using Pilinaha as prevention, although past, present, and future is not all disruption, I'm just using this viewpoint as to define just what like Lilinoe had discussed about like historical and intergenerational trauma leading to the socioeconomic risk factors that we face, right? Like the amount of incarceration, houselessness, those that are unhealthy. That story, I call it the story of the broken Hawaiian that gets told too often. That's us stuck in disruption. So when we start off with wholeness, we start off with our better selves. We are whole. Even though we come from dirt that, has a lot of eha, we have to remember we're still whole. And that wholeness, as we move from that place of wholeness and we're faced with this disruption, we grow up in disruption, we see disruption, it's glorified in TV shows and movies, and our keiki, they get very distracted by that. They get stuck in disruption. And so that's by what I mean by past, present, and future having a role here. That's that, you know, but it also allows us to remember we're not alone. We're not alone in this. We're all growing up in these same things, that we all come from various different viewpoints on connection to culture. A lot of us come having no olelo Hawaii. To my mother went to Kaiapuni, and now I do as well. And so, you know, understanding we're not alone in disruption, but we need to move into air, into sovereignty. And here is where our community comes in. Like Kanoelani was saying, this is where the practitioner is very important. Who is our practitioners? Like, to me, when you can claim ike from a mo'okuauhau that is noted and is, everybody knows is a maikai kumu, and that knowledge is solid and pa'a, you can claim, you know, that ike. Also, words and action are very different. And so looking in the community, who's doing that action? You know, are you Uncle Kione over by One Kahakaha doing the Aina work? Like the most amazing Kanaka I have been so blessed to get to know lately. And he is very inspiring to me. That is someone you don't see talking much, you just see him doing the work. And so that community, finding the community, the Aina-based education programs that you see at Ho'olu Aina, at Kako'oiwi, you see at Papahana Kuaola, you see in different schools. And that's the community, that's your area where you're gonna find that liberty, that sovereignty that's gonna liberate you into this mindset that's gonna allow you to huli that transformation. And a lot of that lies in your connection to Aina. So bringing it back to, what is the ahu you're feeding? Is it this mindset? Is it this type of livity? Is it this Aina-based, you know, practice? Is it holding ceremony to you know, so it's and honoring our holidays, or just like being ono for the ike, so you can, when faced with the disruption, you have these tools. And they're alive, and they're being done today, so many places across our Pai'aina. It's really ono to see, and we definitely want to continue that and perpetuate that. Okay, next slide. So learning art form, this is our learning assessment tools. I'll go deeper into this next week at our other webinar. So next slide. Here we are. So the format system, it's an open-ended learning model that offers educators a method for broadening their delivery of instruction. It specifically encompasses strategies that appeal to the diverse way students learn. I love this concept because this really spoke to me. Next slide. So in here, you have 4 quadrants for learners, right? Quadrant 1 is strengthening. This is the type of learner that is going to ask the question why. And its strength is innovative and imagination. This is the quadrant that is the one that really connects to the knowledge by personalizing it. Next quadrant. We have, so this here is a model of how we would deliver our curriculum in an activity focused on reaching the students that learn best in this quadrant. And those are the ones that are going to connect to the knowledge emotionally. So telling mo'olelo, or having, like, starting with a pule, that's what's going to grab these types of learners. And then you have quadrant 2. Quadrant 2, it loves to ask the question, what? These are the ones that love facts. Facts is what feeds who they, what they know. And in these types of learners, this is the type of learner that our current education system is geared towards. They're geared towards the lecturers. These ones are going to be the ones that like to learn that way. They use factual data to build design concepts, right? They learn best by testing theories in a way that is sensible. And this type of learner, they form reality. So they perceive emotionally abstractly, and they process it reflectively. So This is that type of learner. And then you have quadrant 3. This is also another quadrant. If learners learn best in this type of quadrant, that they are also, the education system really likes 2 and 3. Take this knowledge, learn it, work it. Take this knowledge, work it. But type 3, they love to ask, how does this work? They're opposite of ones where the emotion, tying emotion to knowledge is frustrating for them. They just want to get to the work. They just want to do it. So this is where they will have practicality, and sensibility is really where like these types of learners learn best. They seek it to be usable. They want to know how to help in real life. And then quadrant 4 is also a favorite because this is also a quadrant that is not, you won't see often in your standard education system, but here is where they take the knowledge and they move it forward. So this one's, they love to ask, what next? What do we get to do with this knowledge? How can I, they seek the hidden possibility. They learn by trial and error. They like to enrich reality. So we are going to dive a lot deeper. This is introduction to our curriculum. We do have 3 more webinars where I'll really get to dive into format and pilinaha and give you examples of the curriculum that we've developed using these models. So mahalo nui for your time. I believe we're just 1 minute over. Wow, 10 minutes went by really fast. But here's our closing protocol. And I want to just take a quick minute, if you guys could this is our manaʻauʻao, and if you, I think there has in mahalo Caroline for putting it in the chat, but we would love to hear your thoughts on how you felt about today's presentation. So here's our manaʻauʻao, just one word that really gravitated towards you. And also in the chat, please take a minute to do this survey for the Ohana Center of Excellence and Papalolokahi. So if you can see that link in the chat, mahalo so much, Lilinoe. Please click on that. This evaluation is very important. It informs us on our work. It allows us to tweak what needs to be tweaked, and also where we are succeeding and what is our challenges. We love evaluation, but we can't do evaluation without you doing the these mahalo nui, these surveys. So thank you so much. And then here we have our Hawaii train in our YouTube. So all of our trainings is been up. We have our past 2 frameworks and our past 2 webinar series that we've done in the past with our state disaster response, and also our Kani Lehua framework on our Native Hawaiian cultural intervention. So both of this is, you can find the links to these trainings on Hawaii Train and on YouTube, and also on our website. Yes. And I did want to invite Viana. Did you want to, so Viana is my amazing team member, to talk about evaluation.
Yes, mahalo Kea. So in addition to the Ohana Center of Excellence Evaluation Survey, please, we ask that you take the time to fill out this evaluation survey, which is different. This survey is specifically for this webinar for the Mapuna Lab, and it is required for those who would like to get their CEUs, and we really appreciate all of the feedback. And if you have any feedback, any comments, anything, please feel free to fill out this evaluation survey. Yes, thank you.
Mahalo, Viana. Yes, you guys, we love the feedback. So please, the evaluation is so important. And we would like to end this awesome time. I did want to let you know of our upcoming webinar dates for our part 2 of our curriculum training. This will be next week, Wednesday, from 10 a.m. to 11:30. We will have our guest speaker, Trevor Atkins, talking, and our subject is knowing our audience, meeting our youth where they're at in Hawaii and abroad, as we deal with a lot of Native Hawaiians living now in the diaspora. So we will be addressing that as well. And then I did want to invite Caroline to just also share about our very next webinar we have as part of our Hānai Ahu series.
Mahalo, Kea and Viana. Kasalelia, Ali, if Auntie Jackie Tele is still here. And aloha kako, everyone, very quickly. Next week, Tuesday, is our next webinar in this series. Home for me is the island of Pohnpei in the Federated States of Micronesia. So as a compact migrant here, we will be exploring how the protective and resiliency factors in the Ahupuaʻa conceptualization model affects compactor free association migrants here in Hawaii. So if you're free, please join us again next week, Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Caroline. Thank you so much. Okay. Yes, a tad over time, but we still just want to close this space with you with our Oli Ha'ule. This Oli calls for a dismembering of violent and non-resonant structures for the uprising of healing and truth. Just like Kanoelani had shared, yes, the system has to kind of fall, and we need to rise as the Lepo Popolo. So that's what this is, a call for radical healing, an acknowledgement of the hardships and a catalyst to activate resilience. I invite you to Oli with me as we close our very first webinar for Makawalu Naʻauʻao. Ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani au, ho'ale kalepo po lo. Ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani au, ho'ale kalepo po lo. Ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani au, ho'ale kalepo po. We're just gonna upo'o 2 times.